Good morning. Thank you for starting your morning here, learning about the Farm Bill. I'm delighted to be moderating this session with our two speakers who are probably the most knowledgeable people about farm policy in this state. Laurie and Kimmie are who I go to when I have questions about things, and I am regularly sending folks to them. So my name's Lisa Manixma. I'm your moderator for this morning. When you have questions, please raise your hand. I have a mic. I will bring it to you. By the end of today, you will be able to give this speech, no problem, because you're going to hear the same thing over and over at the beginning of all of your sessions. On your table, you have these session feedback cards. These are essential. Your feedback actually does get read and does get taken into account for the next Oak Conference and for conferences going forward. So please definitely let Oak folks know what you think about this morning's session. And if you're here for CEUs, see the folks at the registration desk, and they can connect you with the paperwork you need for that. Yeah, so we will get started. Actually, I didn't even ask, do you want me to introduce you both, or are you going to do it yourselves? Okay. Happy to turn this over to Kimmie and Laurie. You're welcome.
Who's first? I don't know. All right, we're good so far. We figured out how to advance slides. We're on a good start. So, Kimmie and I are both with Community Farm Alliance, and despite Lisa's glowing praise, we know more about farm policy than your average person, but we also lean heavily on people, especially for federal policy work, for people who work more at the federal level. But we are definitely have a strong mission within Community Farm Alliance to represent Kentucky farmers in Frankfort and in DC. So, yeah.
You want to introduce
Yeah,
yourself?
so I'm Laurie White. I serve as Central Kentucky Local Food Coordinator for Community Farm Alliance. I'm based in Berea, Kentucky.
And I'm Kimmie Ishmael. I am CFA's Policy Campaign Coordinator, and I am based out of Lexington, Kentucky. All right. And a little bit about CFA. We are a membership-based organization. We have many passionate members that are a mix of urban and rural, farmers and non-farmers. And the community and Community Farm Alliance is not defined by geography, but by the values that govern good stewardship of land, family, and community. So we have a booth outside, and if you all want to know more about CFA or become a member, feel free to stop by the booth. Jessica's out there with her cute baby, and you can see a baby too. And so today we will talk a little bit about the Farm Bill content and its process, or a little bit about organics in the Farm Bill, local food systems, and then how to have a voice in the process. We'll really focus on advocacy, how to get involved, but then we'll also have a little postcard writing activity at the end. And if you really need some more basic information, CFA did have a Farm Bill Basics. You can see that on our YouTube channel. YouTube Community Farm Alliance will have a bunch of different videos on there that you can choose from.
Starting out, it's occurred to me it'd be interesting to see how many of you know that you have been in some kind of a program that's a Farm Bill program. Okay, I imagine by the end of this talk that more of you will realize that you have been affected by Farm Bill programs. So I want to talk about where this bill comes from, what its history is. The original, and you should know that the Farm Bill is not the actual name of the legislation. It has a different name each time it is redone, but for the sake of being able to talk about it, we do call it the Farm Bill, even though it has different names through the years. So the first one was the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933. It was part of the New Deal and was addressing the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. And it was really about creating a safety net for farms in those very tumultuous times. It has grown over the years, and in 1973, the nutrition programs were added to the Farm Bill. So the biggest one of those being SNAP, was food stamps at the time, but now there are other nutrition programs too, and we'll talk a little bit about those. So that made it an omnibus bill, which means that it's a really big piece of legislation that has to go through multiple committees before it gets finalized. Some other things along the way, conservation titles were added, and the most recent Farm Bill was in 2018. It was called the Agriculture Improvement Act. So the Farm Bill, it expires like every 4 to 6 years, usually 5 years. The last 2 times that the Farm Bill was set to come up for reauthorization, they extended the previous Farm Bill until they could come to an agreement on the new Farm Bill. So it's around 5 years, but there's a little bit of wiggle room. So looking back at where the Farm Bill came from, starting in the 1930s, it's important in understanding what the Farm Bill looks like now to know where it came from. So this was before Civil Rights Movement. This was at the height of sharecropping. It was originally intended to help the big grain farms of the Midwest during the Dust Bowl. And if you look at the Farm Bill now, you can still see very much that that's still like the majority of the programming in the Farm Bill is still set in that framework. It's come a long way since then. We've added programs to support specialty crops. We've added programs for conservation, but we've added some equity measures in the Farm Bill, but there's still a long way to go to really make the Farm Bill equitable for different demographics of farmers, as well as different demographics of the agricultural sector.
All right, so what's in the Farm Bill? What does it cost? So these numbers are in the billions, and if you can't tell, the nutrition title takes up about 76% of what the Farm Bill costs. Then you have the other 4 breakdown here. We have crop insurance, commodities, and conservation, and then we have other. So that is where like miscellaneous title and other things like that live.
And you should know that there's tension in negotiations for the Farm Bill about the nutrition part of the Farm Bill and the farm programs.
Right.
And every time the Farm Bill's up for reauthorization, there's argument. Some people want to separate these from each other. Some people have said we should call this the Food and Farm Bill. And some parties who want to really cut spending on nutrition programs have been prevented from doing so because they don't want farm programs cut. And so it's a tension that happens every time we redo Farm Bill, but that's something good to know about the politics of this.
Yeah. So as we start to think about the drafting of the Farm Bill, what it even is, who even writes the Farm Bill? So typically we have the committees, the Ag Committee on Nutrition and Forestry in the Senate and the House will come together, and they have the initial responsibility of drafting the bill. But throughout the legislative process, there will be chances to add or take out, which is amending, certain aspects of the bill. So we have Senator Mitch McConnell, who sits on the Senate Ag Committee, but we also have some other influential members of Congress voting in the Farm Bill. So a little bit about the process. A lot of people think of it as like Schoolhouse Rock, and you know, I wish it was that easy, but it's really not. So the path to a new farm bill is more than a few steps. So like we just mentioned, the Senate and House Ag Committees, they come up with the bill, they vote on it in their committees, and then it goes to each of the chambers to be debated, amended, voted on that floor. But then step 3, a lot of people don't realize is they actually form a conference committee, so they come together, make one bill that they can agree on, and then that is the bill that is voted on in each chamber and then sent to the president. So a few steps in between in the Schoolhouse Rock, but you know, we eventually get there. And I wanted to point this out because there are so many points in this process for you to advocate and be a part of the process, and we will talk about some of those today too. And one of those ways to be involved is to know what a marker bill is. So a marker bill is a bill that's introduced to Congress just to signal policy interest or ideas or gather support around an issue. So some examples of, you know, this would be getting support for feeding programs or expansion of SNAP or things like that. Then you would want to call your members of Congress and say, please support this marker bill. And the more support the marker bill has, the more likely it's going to be included into the big omnibus farm bill. So they play an important part to signal, support and interest in ideas, and it's a great way for constituents to get involved. But after it's passed, doesn't stop there. Everything still has to go through appropriations and rulemaking, and that means assigning all of those budgetary items to those programs, but also rulemaking, defining terms and outlining structure for those outlets that are doing those programs.
Yeah, so sometimes a program will have really broad outlines in the Farm Bill, but there's so much to still be decided about how that program is going to be implemented, who's going to be eligible, how much will they be eligible for. So all of that will be secondary after the bill is signed into law. So there's some things that, so the number of titles in the Farm Bill has changed over the years. There's not a set structure for how it is, but currently the 2018 Farm Bill has 12 titles, and we're going to go through these a little bit so you get an idea about what's in each one of them. But there's some things that are not in the Farm Bill that you might think should be in there. So the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, are other pieces of federal legislation that we have to be in compliance with, but are not part of the Farm Bill. School meals are not part of the nutrition title. They're part of the Child Nutrition Authorization Act, or the National School Lunch Act. The WIC program, FDA food and drug safety stuff is separate from the Farm Bill. Meat inspection, farm and food worker rights and protections, irrigation water rights, a lot of tax issues, civil rights procedures within USDA. If someone has a civil rights complaint against the USDA, those procedures are set outside of the Farm Bill in civil rights legislation. So lots of things that are not in the Farm Bill that you might expect to see there. So just looking at the titles of the Farm Bills, Besides nutrition, there's 3 big titles that are in the farm portion of the Farm Bill. One of those is commodities. And the programs in the commodities title provide price supports for, these commodity crops that are usually grown on a large scale. They include price loss assistance and ag risk coverage. These programs have grown over time, and a couple of things of interest to those of us who are not big industrial farms growing corn or soybeans is that you should know that in 2020, almost 40% of net income for farmers came from government payments. How many of you got your 40% of your income, farm income, from government programs? Yeah, so it's not small-scale farms that are benefiting from these programs generally. And a hot thing in the commodities title is this actively engaged in farming rule. And it has had different interpretations over time. And this is who can qualify for these commodity support payments. And it is very broadly defined right now as who is actively engaged in farming and able to receive farm payments. In the Trump administration, they broadened the interpretation of that rule to include many different kinds of family members, nieces and nephews from farms. And instead of having previously there had been a rule about you had to spend so many hours in active management of the operation, they changed it to anybody who was part of a family farm, which the definition of family farm is so broad that 99% of farms fall into the category of the way family farms are defined. So, so moving along from commodities, are you up for conservation?
Yeah, so when it comes to conservation, a big program in that one is EQUIP, which is Environmental Quality Incentive Program. These offer assistance to landowners and operators, as well as opportunities for beginning and socially or historically underserved farmers. So these range from technical assistance to other things like that. When it comes to conservation, we can see how it is laid out here on working lands, land retirement, easements, and partnership grants. This process is for ranking applications and eligible practices preferred, while also having cost share percentages. And EQUIP has an organic allocation, which is given strictly to them. The other program that is involved in the title conservation, which is the CSP program, which is the Conservation Stewardship Program. There are over 200 conservation practices also in EQUIP, so huge, big program, and it covers a lot. But conservation, Title II, is one of the biggest spending programs as well. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about these different big programs. It's definitely getting a lot of money.
Something you might want to know about the conservation title is those 200 conservation practices are equally ranked in what level of cost share that they get. No matter, some of those practices we know have greater conservation benefits than other practices. So there's some call to distinguish between practices, to give higher support for practices that have much higher ecological benefits. So like, say, comparing cover crops. We all know cover crops are better than not using cover crops, but it's even better if you can have perennial systems, have polycultures, do silvopasture. So some of those practices have much higher ecological benefits, but are still ranked the same as all the other conservation practices. And, oh gosh, I thought of something else I wanted to say about conservation programs, but I don't remember what it was.
We can come back to it if we need to. So titles 3 and 4. Trade, so actually about 20% of U.S. food and agriculture production is actually exported annually. So Congress will have to have some conversations on how this 2023 Farm Bill, that trade and food assistance program can create new market opportunities for U.S. farmers and producers and address food insecurity kind of on a global scale. So that's a little bit about what the trade title is about, but it mostly supports agricultural export programs and kind of address food issues on a global scale. The nutrition title we had talked about earlier, it makes up over 75% of the budget. It also houses things like SNAP, which was formerly known as food stamps. But the nutrition title also holds emergency feeding programs and the food distribution program on Indian reservations. So it's not just SNAP and WIC, but it does make up a big percentage of the Farm Bill. Oh, sorry, not WIC.
So under credit, this is really governing both direct lending from the government and also lending that is backed or guaranteed by the government. So primarily the Farm Service Agency is the one that USDA has most direct control over. But they really only are in charge of about 3% of farm debt, and then 4% of farm debt is guaranteed by FSA, but not directly lent from them. And but Farm Credit is a public-private partnership where the government, USDA, backs and guarantees farm credit loans, and but they're a private lender, but they're like a preferred lender, so they have status in these programs. And so this is again setting who's eligible, what are the terms that they're eligible for, what are their repayment terms. And for those that FSA doesn't directly control, for those preferred lenders, it's setting up those who can be a preferred lender. What does their track record have to be to have this preferred status? Who are they serving? What agricultural aims are they serving, and who's eligible? So all of that falls under the credit title. And there's been a lot of improvements there, but there's a lot of room still to improve that situation. Under rural development, you've got lots of things that support the rural communities where most farms are located. It includes ATRA, which does a lot of research that is oriented towards sustainable and smaller farm systems. And in Kentucky, a lot of our farmers market pavilions have been funded with rural development funds, so that's another connection.
All right, so Title VII, when it comes to the research title, of course, research programs are at the forefront. The 2018 Farm Bill amended and reauthorized funding for the Ag and Food Research Initiative, the Organic Agricultural Research and Extension Initiative, and the Specialty Crop Research Initiative. But you also might be familiar with some other programs that are included in this research title, like NIFA or the long-term agroecological research. Also, the Office of Chief Scientist. So,
some of the smaller titles in the Farm Bill are forestry and energy. I'm not going to talk a lot about forestry, but just so you know that it's in there. And then in energy, there's some things in here about like developing bioenergy sources, use all the things that are efforts at using corn as an energy source, doing methanol capture on livestock operations. But most commonly in Kentucky, I think you're probably going to be involved in, as far as the energy title goes, with the REAP program, which I think the other session that's talking about on-farm energy is happening right now, so you might have to catch up with those folks later to talk about getting solar on farms. But that's a program under the energy title that helps with getting Rural Energy for America project. That's the REAP.
And to talk a little bit about Title 10, horticulture, this covers federal programs to support specialty crops, like fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, and promote local and regional foods and govern certified organic agricultural production. But this also houses LAMP. That is the Local Agricultural Market Program. Some of you all might be a little bit more familiar with.
And remember that horticulture is part of that teeny tiny little sliver in that pie chart that we looked at.
Yeah, that tiny, tiny piece.
Okay, so crop insurance is one of our other 3 big Farm Bill titles as far as spending goes. And this is part of that original intent of the Farm Bill to provide a safety net for farms. But who's in the safety net is the question. So the crop insurance title determines what crops are eligible for insurance, who is eligible to enroll in crop insurance, what management practices are acceptable. So there's a set of management practices that are considered good management practices, and there's been a little bit of conflict between organics and crop insurance programs because the way that organic farmers do things doesn't necessarily match up with what's considered good management practices in crop insurance programs. Also, for farms that are transitioning to organic, there's often a period before you really see the long-term benefits of organic production kick in that yields are reduced. And any practice that reduces yields is considered to be a bad management practice, which disqualifies you for insurance payments. So those are some areas where there's considerable improvement to be made in crop insurance, particularly for organic farmers. This also sets, crop insurance also sets payment limits or doesn't set payment limits, as the case may be. And then in the miscellaneous title, we've got several other programs, including some things that apply to livestock, poultry production, and technical assistance outreach for beginning farmers and ranchers and socially disadvantaged farmers.
Which is a tiny sliver
Yeah,
as well.
this tiny, tiny, tiny little sliver. So there's not a section of the Farm Bill that talks about local foods, so people who are producing food and selling it directly within their community. But the LAMP programs, the Local Agriculture Market Program, covers farmers market support, no, I'm getting my acronyms mixed up. Farmers market support, local food support, value-added producer grants, and regional food system partnership. And then, as I said, rural development funds have supported a lot of food system infrastructure, including some commercial kitchens in Kentucky. Kane Kitchen was funded partly with rural development funds, and lots of our farmers market pavilions. Urban agriculture was added, a lot of support for urban agriculture added in the most recent 2018 Farm Bill under the horticulture title. And then, of course, all of those producer supports, crop insurance, credit, conservation programs, those are all supporting producers who are participating, who are the food in the local food system.
So when did organics become a part of the Farm Bill? So the first time organics was brought up in the Farm Bill was around 1990 when the Organic Foods Production Act was signed into law. But the most recent, in 2018, organic research programs received baseline funding of $50 million per year. So it's come a long way since 1990, but there are some other issues when it comes to organics in the Farm Bill, such as like crop insurance discrimination, planting date issues, consolidation and completion, and some supply issues as well. Did you want to talk?
So just looking at our current situation, where we are right now heading into negotiations for this most recent Farm Bill, that figure that I quoted you earlier, about 40% of payments in 2020 coming from the government to farms, part of that big increase was because of pandemic assistance programs. And so some of these programs that were part of these big pandemic COVID relief bills in Congress could potentially become permanent in the Farm Bill. Some of them are more likely to become permanent than others, including the Organic and Transitional Education and Certification Program, food safety certification. There were some of the other long-standing programs received increased funding from COVID relief bills and reduced match. So a lot of these federal programs have a matching requirement that the farmer puts up so much and then the federal government puts up the rest. And that balance really switched with all of the COVID money that came in, about how much had to be put up by farmers or food system players of various sorts who were benefiting from these programs. So just want to say a little bit about competition and consolidation in ag and food markets and how the Farm Bill affects that. So across food and farm systems, there's been so much consolidation in the last couple of decades. That's in retail, that's in distributors. So grocery stores have consolidated more and more. Even big restaurant conglomerations have consolidated. Farm supply businesses of all kinds have gotten to fewer and fewer who share a greater and greater portion of the market. And that is bad for anybody who's trying to participate in the market. It allows bigger farms to get bigger and bigger and benefit more and more. So some things that the Farm Bill could do to address this would be to have more controls on payment limitations, on capping program benefits, so that I think some of the payment caps are like, if you have an adjusted gross income of $900,000, then we don't subsidize you anymore. But some of them don't have an adjusted gross income limit at all. So we're subsidizing some really, really, really big players in the farm and food system. So some things we could do are strengthen antitrust enforcement, promote fair competition through market transparency. This is like making contracts public and transparent, and modernizing the Packers and Stockyards Act that governs a lot of cattle markets. And just going back one more time about crop insurance and who's benefiting. So this is showing you the number of acres in a farm and how much they're getting payments from crop insurance. So you have to go all the way up to 500 acres or more in a farm before half of farms are participating in crop insurance programs. There have been improvements in crop insurance programs over the last couple of years. Like they've introduced the products that are more applicable to diversified farms that have a lot of crops and livestock, but there's still a lot of barriers to using those programs. So the Whole Farm Revenue Protection Plan, has anybody heard of Whole Farm Revenue? Okay, a couple of you. So, but only 8 policies have been sold in the whole state of Kentucky for Whole Farm Revenue Protection. So they're improving their products, but they're still difficult to use, and by far, the majority of farms are not benefiting from these farm safety net programs.
So now that we've talked a little bit about the Farm Bill, what it is, what's in it, what programs are in it, how can you all advocate throughout this whole process? And we have a list here of ways that you can advocate, and of course we'd be more than happy to talk a little bit more after this as well, but you can attend more trainings and webinars, and if you're not familiar, CFA also recently held a local foods in the Farm Bill webinar and a Black Farmer Focus Farm Bill webinar. So if you're interested in either one of those 2 issues, they should be up on our YouTube page as well, along with the Farm Bill Basics. CFA is also a part of a network called Kentucky Food Action Network, where we focus on policy, and one of the priorities is Farm Bill. We have multiple Farm Bill trainings and campaign meetings. Look up Kentucky Food Action Network on Facebook to look for more updates. You can contribute to CFA's Farm Bill platform. We would love to hear from people in the community on what their issues are and what they care most about. Attend a lobby day. CFA will be going to DC, like we are here soon, to lobby on the Farm Bill federally. And advocate for marker bills like we had talked about previously by contacting your member of Congress. And then we have a link that we could share to complete a House Ag Committee Farm Bill review if you want to do that as well. So when it comes to marker bill advocacy, the way you can advocate in that space is just sending an email to your member of Congress asking them for their support for the marker bill. But you can also set up a meeting, and typically you will meet with their staff on that issue. But you can also just show up to an in-district event like a town hall and ask them to sponsor or co-sponsor a marker bill.
Yeah, so marker bills, so the Farm Bill is this huge, massive piece of legislation. You heard all of those different programs, plus all the nutrition stuff that's in there. So it can feel like, how can you possibly influence? But marker bills are like a way to influence a small thing that then becomes part of that big stuff. So some of those programs that are really important to local food systems and to organics started out as something that got added into the Farm Bill that wasn't originally there. So we're really early in the cycle this year as far as the new Congress goes. And so a lot of these things haven't been introduced yet. Some of them were introduced in the last Congress, but have yet to be reintroduced, but we're watching for them to come out. And so there were a bunch. And do we have any livestock producers in the room? Nobody with live. Okay, one. Did you have any trouble getting into processing during the pandemic?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so there were a slew of measures that were introduced to deal with this problem of not enough capacity in processing for people who are marketing their who are finishing their animals and marketing meat locally. The Strengthening Local Processors Act actually was something that Kenya Abraham and I worked on the bill language together for that. So it's kind of cool that it's coming up, and we expect that it's going to be reintroduced to this Congress in the next week or so. So a couple other things there, some of them having to do with processing, some of them having to do with market regulations and how that consolidation in the livestock industry has really put a stranglehold on farmers. Then on local food systems, the Farmers Market and Food Bank Local Revitalization Act was introduced last Congress. We expect to see it again this year. The National Farmers Market Coalition has come out strongly in favor of this. It has some measures in it related to senior farmers market nutrition programs, and some other things. We talked about those LAMP programs that support local food systems. One of the problems with those LAMP programs is that they are really not very geographically distributed well. It's like there's certain states that just get the majority of the funding over and over and over again. So that's one thing we hope to address there. More about market competition and trying to reverse that trend of consolidation in the markets that hurts everybody. And the Agriculture Resilience Act and the Climate Stewardship Act address some of those issues about the conservation programs where we really need to see those dollars that are invested, we really want to see the best ecological outcomes for those investments that we're making, and make them accessible to the people who can really benefit the most from them.
And to get involved in those, hopefully, CFA will continue to monitor those bills, as well as the Kentucky Food Action Network will continue to monitor those bills. So feel free to reach out to us, continue to stay involved, and we can keep you involved in the process. And to talk about some advocacy, we're going to do a little postcard activity. We put some postcards on the table. It says, "Hello from the field" on there. Everybody grab one of those. If you don't have one, just raise your hand and we'll bring one over to you. But we have a map up here of who your representative or your senator is, if you know where your county is located. We would like for you to fill out that postcard, and then Laurie and I are actually going to DC tomorrow. Woohoo! And we are going to have a lot of meetings on Wednesday, 5 actually. So lots of meetings with representatives, and we want to hand deliver these postcards to them to show some impact of what people in their community really are looking to solve, and what issues are most important to them, and why the Farm Bill matters to them. So fill that out for us, and you don't have to turn it in right now. We do have a booth out here, so if you don't have an ink pen right now for some reason, we have a booth out here that you can give us the thing afterwards. But as you all fill that out, I will talk a little bit more about some more advocacy opportunities that you all can participate in. We just had, with the Kentucky Food Action Network, we just had a media training on January 25th, and that was about if you're interested in writing an op-ed, talking to a reporter, giving a quote to somebody, or telling your story to a local news station. We kind of went over the process of doing that. So if you're interested, like I said, we put our emails at the beginning of the slides. I'll go back to it. Feel free to reach out to me, and we can make sure you get that recording. Also, attend a lobby day with a CFA or KFAN. Like we mentioned before, Laurie and I are going. CFA is going again in March. But also KFAN is going in March, and there is limited space, so if you'd like to come. But also KFAN's having a Farm Bill meeting with a little bit more of a deep dive on February 22nd. at 3 p.m. And then we talked about advocating for different marker bills. Here's some more resources for you if you would like to be a part of CFA. CFA offers so many different things. Like I said, we just had a local foods in the Farm Bill webinar, as well as a Black Farmer Focus in the Farm Bill webinar. But we also have different working groups like meat processing, climate change. You can get involved with policy issues, disaster relief, farmers market support, but network with farmers, small business owners, and agricultural advocates. So please join us. We have so many opportunities for you to get involved. Here's some pictures of us. I had testified at a committee hearing with 2 of our members who are farmers who participate in the Kentucky Double Dollars program. We have a couple of our farmers at the Kentucky Black Farmers Conference, but as you can see, we're also on the picket line and having a farm-to-table meal. So really, really awesome paybacks if you get a membership. And with your KFAN membership, we do a lot of different trainings, webinars, working groups. We have 3 working groups. Those are Ag and Food Systems, where we talk about Ag and Food Systems, the programs that farmers participate in with feeding programs, and child and adult feeding, and then we have a SNAP and WIC technical assistance group. So this group is for advocates who want to network in the ag and feeding and hunger space. And here is a list of all of the trainings that we've given in the past that you can have access to and watch those as well. And they range from Advocacy 101 to evidence-based policy. So all across the board. And there's a picture of our great steering committee, as well as 2 of our members also testifying at our State House. Here's the KFAN staff and who to reach out to. There's contact number or emails on there for whatever group you would like to participate in. So what is next? We would like to know more about, if you would like to know more about climate conservation, some more subsidy reform. We're looking to see what is next for us in CFA to hopefully inform our members about. And so we would like to talk to you a little bit more about, what you all would like to see as well. And any questions? You want to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say about your postcards, you don't feel like you need to be limited to one. Our 2 senators are for everybody in this room if you live in Kentucky, but then you also have your congressional representative from your district. And so we're going to deliver these to their offices. Even if we don't have a meeting with their staff, we're going to take their postcards and drop them off anyhow. And let's see. Yeah, we're not asking you to support any particular thing at this time, just whatever it is that stuck out to you as something that you feel is important. These senators are, I'm going to get your question in just a minute. These senators and congressional representatives are meeting with people all the time, from the Soybean Association, the Corn Growers Association, and big commodity groups that represent industrial farming interests. And so it's really important that they hear from you all also. Yes, a question.
That's it. Timing. So it's not too late.
Nope.
But some things have already been started. So what's really the timeline crunch to pay attention to for the Farm Bill? Like, it's, now is good to pay attention, but when does it start wrapping up? When is the local voice probably too late? Never, but because it's gone higher up the chain. Any thoughts on that?
So the vote should take place in September, but like we said, sometimes that date gets pushed, and lots of people who are listening to things say that it may get pushed this year. But Yeah, they're having hearings now, but we haven't seen any draft anything yet. We haven't even seen these smaller pieces like the marker bills coming out yet. So this is a really good time to get in on the ground level. They've only just finished up committee assignments, so this new Congress is getting moving slowly.
And then CFA is Kentucky-based.
Yes.
I live in Ohio. Do you have a counterpart there that I might want to tune into, pay attention to?
I would say the Ohio Ecological, what is the FF?
OFA?
OFA, yeah. That would be my best place to send you in Ohio.
Okay.
Excellent question. Mr. Coleman?
The legislative agenda of organic farming over Kentucky and the country? And secondly, do we have a PAC that we make contributions to the campaigns of these various representatives?
Okay, so Mr. Coleman's question was two parts, one about a PAC, a political action committee, and one was about a unified agenda. So, for organic only. Okay, so I'm not sure about a national one that is specifically organic, but the reason that Kimmie and I are headed to DC tomorrow is for the annual meeting of the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. And that includes OFA, and maybe some of you all here from Indiana. It includes stakeholders who are interested in sustainable agriculture from across the nation. So yeah, our little Kentucky influence can only be so much at the federal level, but when we're working together with a national coalition like that, it makes a big difference. And so yeah, we really look to their leadership, their democratic leadership, because we all work. It's a coalition, and we all work together at the federal level. And then a PAC. I don't know of a specific PAC that is representing organic interests.
Yeah, I don't know either.
That's something you can do is when these big companies come in to meet with representatives across, not just ours, but across the country, to get appointed with us.
Yeah,
It could be $1,000 so it gets attention.
yeah, agreed. Any question?
We have a question in the back.
Yeah, recommendations. I'm also from Ohio, but looking to we may be small farms, but we have the advancement or we have the people behind us. We direct market to a large quantity of community members, right? So how can we get all those people, all of our customers, on the same page with other farms? Like if we all put our energies together. Is there anything out there like that that's been happening with I love this postcard idea. We run a 400-member CSA, and I'm gonna post this everywhere I can. So have you worked with other organizations like OFA with trying to coordinate all of the small farms together? We are a pretty large voice when we think about it.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're doing. That's trying to collect the voices of many to have an influence. Lots of these organizations, so I mentioned the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, all of those member organizations have been holding listening sessions, getting feedback. The National Sustainable Agricultural Coalition, or NSAC, has a Farm Bill platform that is 120 pages long and goes through very specifically. So if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of any of these titles, I'd recommend the NSAC platform. But yes, absolutely. Putting another way to do that, I don't think we mentioned, besides doing something very diverse, like these postcards are going to have who knows everything on them, but sign-on letters are a way to take a whole bunch of voices and magnify them. And if you can invite your member of Congress to events, that you have going on. If you have a CSA fair or some kind of an on-farm event, invite your member of Congress, and if they can't make it, they may send a staff person.
I was going to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, so it sounds like also you want to do some movement building, like get these farmers together as a group and build a network of sorts. Is that what you're talking about as well, to have a network?
Yeah.
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 Is there an advantage if we just bombard them all at once with the same 3 topics, right? Instead of us coming from
Yeah.
different angles and different things come in, can we like focus on 3 things? Does NSAC do that?
Yeah, so like she said, you know, the current one is 100+ pages long, but for a meeting, they're going to break that down. It's going to be 1 sheet of the most important points that their members have brought to them. And we've talked about that with CFA. Currently, we have a document that's like 5 pages long, and but we're going to pick out the top ones that are most repeated from our members and most that have the most interest, and pick those top 5 and put on a sheet. So you can have your broad spectrum of issues, but what ones are getting most repeated. And I would, you know, make your group yourself, get all those farmers together, or start joining that Ohio group that Laurie had mentioned, get involved in a local network or a local organization, and utilize them as well as any national partners that you can.
And you all can help us with any letters that you need for us to
Yeah.
have that you're using, give it to us, and we can use it. I can
Yeah.
send it
Yeah.
to both senators and our congressmen.
Yeah.
So like, we're not asking for any particular points right now, but like when some of these pieces of legislation get introduced, then we'll be saying, please contract your senator, your representative, to ask them to support this particular thing. Yeah.
And don't worry about, I don't know what to say, because typically with those action items, we will give you a script, we'll tell you what to say, and then you can add your own personalization to it if you'd like. But don't be scared or, you know, afraid to reach out to your congressperson. Oh,
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I would assume that CFA is nonpartisan, and however, on your Washington trip, I think I saw at the top of your list Senator Mitch McConnell, and you mentioned that Little Kentucky may not have so much influence. However, you may have some access to Senator Mitch McConnell, who has quite a bit of influence over the Republican Party, and especially right now with the committee's selections. And but I was just thinking about Secretary Vilsack, who comes from an area that has a certain amount of electoral influence on the President of the United States when you were talking about the larger farming corporations and their subsidies. And some of the marker bills, I think that you were talking about, that we could address some of those issues. And with Kentucky in particular, it almost seems, well, let me not go too far into that. That would be more of a private discussion. But with Kentucky being a red state, it could be kind of a windfall in being able to get the ear of a certain person as you
Yes.
travel, and whether or not, you know, as a black farmer, I think sometimes we may possibly be pigeonholed in folks thinking that since we're black, we're Democrats, you know, and then with the president trying to get funding to black farmers, and there being holdups with certain litigation and different issues that the Farm Bill, you know, with the Farm Bill, and so, you know, with us being a minority but also having limited resources.
Yes.
And to be in this quagmire situation right now, you know, those are issues that I would like to discuss, but not taking up time for
Sure.
this session.
And we're gonna workshop the Farm Bill platform more at the Kentucky Black Farmer Conference. So we have some time to really work on that some. And yes, McConnell is influential not just in the Republican Party, but in agriculture, because he's on the Senate Agriculture Committee.
One thing that, you know, with it's called the Real Organic Group, they're fighting to make sure that organic, the definition of organic
Yes.
remains organic.
It's an addition.
Because
Yeah.
big ag and big chemical, they're going to bust it up. They're going to be, Bayer's going to be organic in the next year.
And the consolidation is an issue even within the organic industry. And another thing is there's people wanting to, because the organic definition has been diluted somewhat, there's people who want to introduce a new thing that's deep organic or regenerative or something, and that has the potential to splinter the support for organic programs. So yeah, a lot of issues there. And just so you know, we're going to be at our table out here for the rest of the day. If you all have specific questions, we're glad to talk more. Come fill out more postcards.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to host like a town hall with Senator Paul or Senator
Let's do it.
Congressman